the best prompter for AI is AI itself. Write me a prompt that will solve my problem. And then it does that. And then you say, run that prompt. This has worked effectively and effectively. I know they use medicine or vaccines as a use case, but where it be legal or finance, you go across the marketing, you go across the back office, and creating this foundation now gives you a solid structure. Now, somebody who may not be an expert can start doing runtime stuff, asking that thing questions if the expert were in the room.
This is the AI First podcast, hosted by me, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. Join me for real conversations with CIOs and tech leaders about reimagining work with the power of content and intelligence and putting AI at the core of enterprise transformation. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the AI First podcast, where we dive deep into the future of enterprise transformation with the leaders who are making it real. I'm your host, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. My guest today brings a very unique perspective to the intersection of law, AI, innovation, and technology. E.A. Rockett, the Vice President in Adobe's Office of the General Counsel, is also widely known as Adobe's legal CTO. From building expert-powered AI frameworks to redefining governance at scale, Rockett is helping Adobe navigate one of the most ambitious generative AI transformations in the industry. In today's conversation, we'll unpack how Adobe's legal team became a launchpad for ethical innovation, explore Rockett's safe and trusted model, and dig into the bold idea that AI doesn't replace experts, it finally lets us scale them. This is a conversation about enabling trust, transforming legal culture, and getting enterprise AI right. And with that, let's get right into it. Rockett, a longtime friend of Bots and a longtime friend of mine, you are Vice President in Adobe's Office of General Counsel, as I mentioned, but you're known as a legal CTO, which is a bit of an unusual title. So can you share a bit more about your background, your role, and what it means to be a legal CTO?
Absolutely, John. And thank you for having me. So thrilled to be here today. So the legal CTO moniker essentially comes from, I am a lawyer, but I was originally and still am a technologist. And in my role at Adobe, in addition to legal technology, the enablement of legal technology, and because legal technology is pervasive throughout an organization, maybe Adobe, maybe Box. In addition to that, I am part of the AI enablement team for Adobe at large. We call it AI at Adobe. And then lastly, I am one of the customer zero teams into our document cloud business. So we're testing things way in advance, suggesting things to be part of the feature in the product roadmap. So if you combine those three things, that's essentially where the moniker comes from.
And this was a title that you had, I think, even before you were at Adobe. I think it's been a sort of a calling card of yours for many years.
Absolutely. As I'm going from company to company, this kind of convergence of these different disciplines, if you will.
So what motivates you in this role where you're kind of combining your background as a lawyer, your legal expertise, but also your technology passion to really champion AI innovation at Adobe?
What really thrills me, John, and really gets me excited when I get up in the morning, we're at this special moment in time. I've said for years, I'm sure you've said use similar words, code beats paper. We're biased towards action. The issue is that to get to that action, to get to that code, to get to the things that made a meaningful difference, I mean, there was a lot of payload associated with that, right? Everything from program management and product management. And I mean, a lot of key aspects of those things remain super important today. But the velocity has accelerated greatly. And I'm sure you can share similar stories. The longer that trajectory is to get from that idea to what we want, it kind of starts to get diluted along the way. So the idea, the thing that you were trying to do, that problem you were trying to solve, the way that you were trying to solve it, the quicker that you can solve it, get that first iteration, and then, of course, fail forward the way that we often talk about, that is key. So I'm excited because it's like the first time that we're seeing that velocity of iteration that we always wanted. And that velocity of iteration is also allowing personalization at scale. There's some lawyer who does antitrust. I can solution for you. There's someone on the sales side. I can solution for you. So both that velocity, as well as all the scale associated with it.
So you feel like in your role now with the pace of innovation, you can bring solutions to your business much quicker than you've ever been able to in the past.
at phenomenal speeds. I often mention, we've been waiting for this day where, there'll be a very short turnaround between the light bulb moment of, oh, I fully understand the problem and I know what solution will solve that problem.
Well, it's an exciting time. And clearly Adobe is one of those companies that is at the forefront of generative AI with tools like Firefly as one specific example. So I am curious, we're talking not a huge amount about this, but I'm curious from your legal perspective, how would you describe Adobe's overall posture on AI innovation and kind of how you balance that with risk?
Absolutely. So I'll go through what we do internally in our AI at Adobe committee or work stream, as I call it, which is everything comes through there for internal enablement. But even before I get to the AI at Adobe piece of it, being there for this journey, which began with Firefly. I mean, we have much more AI solutions now, but our first entry point was Firefly, or generative AI model for images. I mean, it now does more. It does images, it does video, it does audio, it does much more. But being along for that ride, I can't tell you, John, how blessed and thrilled I feel, because you're just kind of sitting there doing your day to day and what I'll call now the old paradigm. And then we have the generative AI paradigm, which is already an amazing experience to go through. And then the company I was sitting at developed its own foundational model. And in that, we dealt very early with some of the questions like, how was the model being trained? And in our case, we trained off of licensed content, which gave our customers the security that our solution was commercially safe. And then from that just quickly rolled into, and then we can indemnify you. And really gave us a moment, not just to deliver technology, gave us a new way to think of what does safety really mean? In our case, we call it commercially safe. What does commercial safety really mean? And if it is safe, then I can indemnify it. Similarly, after the first Firefly models were out there, we wanted to enable our entire enterprise to use AI for all kinds of things. Our own home-cooked AI plus other third-party AI is technology. We should use technology, whether it's home-cooked or cooked elsewhere, to do great things for us. And we were confronted with the same question, Box, you probably confronted it there, and many other enterprises. How do I enable this full plethora, portfolio, if you will, of technologies quickly, but safely, right? And so in this AI at Adobe initiative, we cooked a A through F framework. I'll share it with you, John. Other companies, other people will describe it differently. But I mean, I think the core fundamentals, the core elements are essentially the same for everybody. And we call it A through F. So there are 6 letters. So A is which team, B is what technology, what foundational model. C, what data are you going to input into your use case? And I know we're going to double click into that, what you're putting into your use case, but that's C, what data you're putting in. D, what are you expecting to come out? E, who's your audience? Who are you going to give it to? Is it just internal? Are you going to give it to your customers? Are you going to put it in the website? And then F, what is really your overall objective? And we use those 6 letters or 6 levers, if you will, to really explore each use case. And here is really the unlock, at least as I've appreciated it. It's not about good use cases, bad use cases, risky use cases, not risky use cases. You're taking those 6 elements, and again, different companies can describe them in different ways, but you're dialing it in. For this use case, well, don't use this technology, use this other technology. Well, for your input data, can you use non-confidential information? So if you dial those 6 levers or dials, if you will, you really can quickly enable all kinds of teams to move fast and get their AI IQ up and really be productive.
So is the process then that someone in the business or someone in IT says, hey, I have an idea for a use case that I think could be powered by AI, and they come to you and the governance committee with the A through F sort of framework filled out for analysis, review, and maybe some recommendations back?
Exactly. So we have 30,000 and change employees, and all 30,000 have access to the portal. And it asks a bunch of questions similar to a DMV application. They don't necessarily realize they're answering A through F. And then it just goes through our process. And we have fast track, like you're just experimenting. It's just internal. It's just for research, right? All the way to, no, I want to use this in something runtime and something for production. Again, the use cases have different attributes for each element.
That's really interesting. We've had a lot of conversations with other leaders just around how they've approached governance, and it does just become a place where you've got a group that's just saying no to everything and making it really hard, or actually seen as more of an enabler. It sounds like what you're trying to do is understand what the business is trying to accomplish, and then maybe help guide them and put guardrails around it, as opposed to say, no, you can't do that.
100%, John. And then, we've been doing it. I can't remember how many years now, because it feels like for a long time, but the AI is still relatively short. We're starting to develop patterns. So we're like, your use case matches this pattern, which we approved already, you're good. So that's also enabling our velocity for enablement.
You mentioned 30,000 employees, but what's the sort of volume of these forms that come through for the framework's scoring?
Here's an answer that I think most tech companies, in particular software companies, would appreciate. We have like hackathon and garage weeks. And so we'll sit around for a few weeks. People part of this committee have other jobs, but the volume when it's not like a garage week or a hackathon is, relatively reasonable. Then you hit those garage weeks, you hit those hackathons where people want to use AI in those.
Or ideating and
yes. And then you just see it rise up. And that really is our challenge, because when they get to those moments, these hackathons, these garage weeks, that's what we really need to enable, because everybody's in that ideation mode, right? So that really is where we're challenged to make sure that we really do that proper balancing and that proper dialing, so that we can get the benefit of those exercises, as well as that's one of the reasons people come to companies like Adobe, companies like Box, because they want to participate in such activities.
Okay, that is fascinating. And I think that's something that most of our listeners could learn from, is kind of taking that very structured approach. And I think many companies are on that path, right, of developing a framework for their governance. But I think you're pretty advanced. Now, we didn't talk about ethics, but you talk about ethics a lot. And so I'm sort of wondering, where do the ethics of AI come into play when you're evaluating, through the framework?
The way that ethics plays, and I think this is rooted in how we began with our Firefly model, right, of being commercially safe. We've always treated ethics super important. We know ethics can be a difference between people using something, not using something, being comfortable with something, not being comfortable with something. Ethics is basically woven in through our A through F processes, woven in through our Firefly model and other models which we've put out there. We view ethics and the appropriate use and appropriate governance of ethics is a super positive thing, because we've all been there before, and you have some window open, pick your foundational model of choice, right? And it may not be so much that what it's giving you back is, jarring you or something like that, but it's just way off, right? So ethics goes all the way from, it's just way jarring, all the way to, things being tuned to tone and your point of view and things like this. So when you do that, I think the user is just way happier. So ethics not being as a last stop on the bus, but as being a continual thread all the way from experimentation to use and productivity.
You sort of use the term ethics must come before procedures. And that's sort of what you're saying here, is that, it's not like go through the whole process and at the very end go, oh, wait, is this ethical? It's like, no. Build it in from the very beginning before you even go through that process. That's what you're describing.
100%, John. And I almost think about it, if we put technology to the side, right? If two people are going to have a conversation about a topic, let's just two people being in conversation with each other. Well, think about, I'm going to have a meeting with John about this. How am I going to approach John? All of that bedside manner, if you will, of how humans just engage with each other. That's like a category of ethics. It's about behavior. It's about how one engages. It's about inputs. It's about outputs. And we're merely translating that, and that is equally applicable to technology. So 100%, John, that is way upstream and definitely not downstream.
This isn't exactly a question about ethics, but it's a little bit maybe more about culture. But, you've talked about the framework for reviewing and looking at, AI solutions. But do you also have a very clear stance on where Adobe won't use AI internally, where things you say, well, that's a thing that we only ever want humans to create or define? Or is it everything sort of open for discussion?
It depends less about the AI, but in our A through F framework, who's your audience? What are you going to do with it? What's your objective F, right? Because let's say I'm in, some sensitive group. and I'm using AI to get back information that whose output is sensitive, am I going to ingest that before, including saying, I agree, I disagree, all of these things before I email it to you, John, right? It really is a combination, quite frankly, of human and machine. Actually, that's why I have that helmet sitting back there, John. I'm a big Formula One fan, F1 for F1 fans out there. I do go-karting myself. But the reason I like Formula One, John, is because people don't win those races. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, they don't win those races because they're only a great driver, nor do they win those races because it's only a great car. It's the combination of the two. So
Right.
in response to your question, since this is the same human plus machine, we have not necessarily said no, no, no in these areas. Rather, we've said human plus machine.
Got it. Okay. That makes perfect sense. So it sounds like it's going to be a bit case by case, but your general assumption is going to be some combination of technology plus people, technology that may or may not include AI. It'll just depend on what the right answer is for each situation. Now, a lot of companies that we talk to, at least in the early days of AI, have really been focusing on AI primarily as, something that's going to help save costs, to drive efficiency, make things more operationally, effective. But you've also pointed out that it's a way to retain talent, which I think is really interesting because I think everyone's worried about AI as replacing talent. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean? How does AI going to help you retain your A players? And what's the connection between employees, loyalty, and companies being open to bringing AI into the environment?
100%. I'm always very candid. So here's my kind of candid position. When I heard across the landscape, I heard people talking and I saw the articles on LinkedIn about AI for productivity and AI for efficiency. Sure. Any technology can help with efficiency, help with productivity, help with cost optimization. But it kind of surprised me a bit because my, natural, genuine response was more like, when a new chip comes out that your computer runs faster, right? Or a new phone comes out that has more megapixels in the camera or something. In the technology space, I think, I know for a fact you're in the same group with me, John. We love when new stuff comes out. We can't wait to play with it, right?
Yeah.
Yes. When we play with it, will efficiencies come? Sure. Will productivity come? Sure. Will cost optimization come? Sure. After we figure out what we're going to do with it. But we first play with it. And I love being here at Adobe because they let me play with technology. I think playing with technology is an employee benefit, such as people pick where they're working based upon the health insurance plan, the dental plan. We went further in Silicon Valley. We put arcade games and pinball machines in the offices, right? And then we did all kind of perks so that people would have fun at work and want to work more and be comfortable. Speaking of on the compute side, and when they join our organization, we're like, what computer do you want? We'll get you the fastest one you want. This is part of our culture to let people play with these shiny objects and see what they can do with them. So to get to the point, I fundamentally believe, yes, efficiency, productivity, cost optimization, that just automatically comes. The number one thing for me is when you're attracting A players want to be at a place where one of their benefits is that they get to play with cutting edge technology.
If you've got a technology environment where you're saying no to that stuff and really restricting who can access it, you're saying that will have a downstream impact on people saying, well, this is really the kind of place I want to work or not.
100%. I mean, when as we all do, hopefully this increases where we all go out to, have a bite with buddies after work. Where it be buddies at Adobe or buddies at other companies right now. Well, we all sit down, respecting confidential information, of course. Oh, we're sharing like, hey, I just tried this and what this did. And I just tried this and this, what this did. What I love about your platform, John, is you can switch between foundational models, right? And that's people just trying to see what these things do. Raise their IQ. Imagine if you went for that sit down, grab some tapas with some friends, and everybody's talking about the cool thing that all these new models do, and you can't participate in the conversation because where you work, you can't touch it,
There's a leader, a former leader at Box that used to have this, I'm sure he still uses it, this expression, show me your technology stack and I'll describe your culture. And I think that's exactly what you're getting at, which is if you have a technology stack that's old, outdated, not modern, doesn't take advantage of these newest capabilities, you're likewise going to have people who are comfortable in that environment versus one where they're innovating and driving change and so forth. So I think it's even more true today than it's ever been.
3,000%. Now, yes, and you. Yes, and when you can make your A players happy, they stay, like you were suggesting before. That's great for retention. And they're more productive because work doesn't feel fatiguing. Conversely, if an A player leaves, whatever cost optimizations, efficiency, productivity you thought you could scrape up from any technology is nothing compared to the value of an A player walking out the door. I've seen A players at various industries, when they walk out the door with that institutional knowledge and the I'll just call it a loss, because it's more than economic loss. It's knowledge loss, all those things, right? It's tremendous to the group, to the organization, to the enterprise. So I place high value on retention, definitely retention of A players, and make those A players happy, reduce that work fatigue, increase that work joy. I think there's a recipe there.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of empowering the experts, right? So you talked about this, the A players are going to be the people who have a lot of the institutional knowledge, have a lot of, knowledge in their domain, the work that they do and so forth. And I'm sort of wondering how you're thinking about AI really empowering those folks and really allowing the company to leverage all of that knowledge. You have this concept of the GIFts framework, and I'm sort of wondering if you could describe what that is, because I don't think it's common knowledge. And how does it help Adobe deliver that sort of idea of expert power at scale?
Thank you for even asking that question. I love talking about, I made this up. It's not an Adobe thing. It's a Rockett thing. I call it the GIFts framework. GIFts stands for Generative Intelligence Foundation Task Sessions. And as I described it, I think each one of those words will come to life. I'm including generative intelligence, sometimes AI, but this is really the combination of human and machine. And we know that since compute came to be, it was always human and machine. How does human plus machine translate in this AI atmosphere, this AI world, in AI enablement, and enabling great AI solutions? So this GIFts framework, essentially, think of two things. So there's this foundation over here, and there's what you're doing at runtime over here. So on the left is the foundation. On the right is what you're doing at runtime. Let me talk about this foundation. And this foundation is where you leverage your experts. And we can finally, John, get scale. We talk about scale all the time, but like, do you see true scale? How do you get true scale? So here's a foundation model that you get true scale. It has 5 layers. Layer 1 is the foundational model that's best for whatever task you're trying to do. It could be a particular LLM. It could be a particular diffusion model. In Adobe's context, you can now pick from a variety of models, including Adobe's native and others that are out there. We announced that most recently. So at the base, layer 1 is the foundational model. And what's happening there? Generative AI has used probabilistic technology to have some general knowledge. That general knowledge could be speaking English, speaking French, speaking Spanish. In language context, layer 1, it learned to speak English. Got it, check. Then you go, give me the vaccine formulation for COVID, let's say, right? And it goes, how am I going to answer that? It doesn't have enough information yet. So it needs layer 2. Layer 2 is essentially subject matter specific knowledge, also known as a rank, right?
Sometimes that knowledge is proprietary, and that's an important element of this as well, right? It's not general knowledge, but it may be proprietary to your business, your domain, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That layer 2 knowledge, that's the main reason it's not in layer 1 usually, right? It's proprietary. It's there may be trade secrets in there. Maybe just the curation of layer 2 content within itself is a craft, because there could be conflicting things in layer 2. So layer 2, the selection of what goes into layer 2, which could be confidential information, trade secret, a bunch of sensitive things, which are not part of your foundational model. So if you're a pharmaceutical company, you loaded a bunch of the formulas for vaccines that have worked, right? So that's your layer 2. So now it's like, oh, I can speak English and I know something about the formulation of vaccines. And remember, layer 1 is probabilistic, general knowledge. It took general text and reversely engineered and learned English. Layer 2, it took the formulations of these vaccines and reversely engineers probabilistic technology, reversely engineered. Oh, okay, I see how these things are constructed or what they comprise. And then you say, give me the formula for the COVID vaccine. It goes, and you're like, that doesn't work because you're missing 3 more layers in my gifts framework. Again, layer 1, general knowledge. Layer 2, specific knowledge. Layer 3 and 4 are determinative. 3 or 4 is where the human comes in with the machine. You sit down with your expert and you go, hey, you're an expert scientist who does vaccines. Give me all the ways that you approach formulating a vaccine. Layer 3, those are the instructions how an expert would approach it. Layer 4 is all the things you would never do. You would never do them because you tried them and you know why they don't work. You wouldn't do them because you tried them and they don't work, but you don't know why. Or others have told you in publications, you know they don't work. And then lastly, layer 5. If you have 4 layers of information, general knowledge, layer 1, specific knowledge, layer 2, what an expert would do, layer 3, what an expert would not do, layer 4. I'm going to sit there and write a prompt that's going to make this work effectively. The best prompter for AI is AI itself. And I know there are articles all over the internet, particularly LinkedIn, about this. In layer 5, you tell AI, this is what I'm trying to do. These are the layers you have accessible to you, although it knows as layer 1 because it is layer 1. Write me a prompt that will solve my problem. And then it does that. And then you say, run that prompt. This has worked effectively. I know they use medicine or vaccines as a use case, but where it be legal or finance, you go across the marketing, you go across the back office, and creating this foundation now gives you a solid structure. So that was over here. The foundation was the left. Now, somebody who may not be an expert can start doing runtime stuff, asking that thing questions if the expert were in the room. Let's say I'm not an antitrust lawyer, but I have questions about antitrust, or I'm not an expert in finance, but I have some questions about P&L. I have some questions about these things. So the non-expert can engage. The expert can as well. The experts and the non-experts can engage with this foundation, this 5-layered foundation for very effective, very consistent, very trustworthy use of AI to solution for them.
And that whole framework is then what allows you to take the expertise that you have in an organization and scale it out and make it valuable for people who aren't the experts.
So John, I love what you said. And where that takes me to, and this brings me back to when we first met. We always knew, you always knew, I guess I learned this from you. We always knew that if you could get your data in one place, your data, your content, and you could curate it, and you could tag it, great things would result. So we had traditional ways of leveraging that for sure. And those were great ways, deterministic compute ways, querying a bunch of things. We're at a stage right now that is the fuel. That is the fuel for this generative AI, because that layer 2, those documents, that content, that data, that's sitting in the curated stuff. And quite frankly, as the experts are trying to figure out what they need to put in layer 3 and layer 4, because they just do it. They never wrote it down, let's say, right? They can also leverage that same repository to get the right content in the layers 3 and layer 4. And the interesting thing is, if I would have turned to somebody and say, okay, here's my framework and there are 5 layers. Now, layer 1 is done. That's the foundational model. Give me layers 2, 3, and 4. They're like, whoa, dude, that's a lot. But what if I said to them, if here's a whole curated repo, it's in your head too, but it's in the repo mostly, and it's in your head, and you'll be able to fill out layers 2, layer 3, and layer 4. And that is why we are finally beginning to even expand further. We were getting great results before. Expand further the importance and the value of curating and tagging our content.
And what's so sort of crazy about this is, as you said, some of it's in people's heads, but a lot of it is literally in documents and systems that are inside of an enterprise today, right? So it's not like you got to go find it. I mean, you do have to go find it a bit, but you can find it at least within your own 4 walls. There's a bit of work there. There's the tagging and all that. But what's cool now is that can all also be done automatically. Whereas before you would have said, hey, I've got all this old content. I need to understand what's in it. I need to go have a team of people go through it one document by one, and tag it manually, and it's probably going to be wrong. It's probably going to be out of date as soon as it's done. You can actually automate that whole thing. And now you've got a corpus of knowledge that's actually valuable.
You now have a corpus of knowledge. We should put that on t-shirts and hats and stuff.
That's what's going to be on the hat.
That's
Rockett.
what's going to be on the hat. You're not going to have a corpus of knowledge or something like that. We'll figure it out.
What does all this mean in terms of roles? When you think about not just on the technology side, but also on the legal side, and think about things like compliance and ethics and all these things, what are the sort of new hybrid roles that you've already seen emerge or you suspect may emerge as a result of all this?
Maybe I'm an old timer mentally or something like that, but I think it is as it was, which I'm thrilled about, which is this. Since the beginning of time and civilization, humans have always respected experts and expertise. The person who could do horseshoes, the person who could make swords back in the days of King Arthur, right? Expertise has been revered throughout the course of time through various cultures throughout humankind. And, along the way, we needed people to help the experts. The way it used to be, the people who helped the experts were apprentices and they were learning the mastery of the craft. So you wind up getting more experts. The expert needed assistants, but the assistants were learning to be the expert. You wind up getting more experts. And there were more people who could do horseshoes in the village, or more people who could forge swords.
Right.
Somehow we got away from that. And the assistants were assisting. The human assistants were assisting, but they weren't on a trajectory to become an expert. And then in your corporate context, they sit down with you 4 times a year, once a year, goes, what's my development path? I think we, at least I, and we generally in technology culture, we want everybody to be an expert in something and something they're into, because then they really thrive and they really do amazing things. I think the change is going to be this, that we're going to go back to, as I'm saying, it is as it was. We're going to go back to, we do need that assistant track. That is an effective method, whether somebody's going to be a forger of swords or be a lawyer or what have you, right? That's still the effective path to train somebody into the art, training somebody into expertise, and where they can take it to the next level. Now, can we please use this technology to take the weight off of some of those tasks so that when the people are assisting, they have AI as an assistant so they can do their assisting, but focus on their other task, which is to continue their journey, if you will, to becoming an expert in something that they're into.
Yeah, because there's, even in that sort of apprentice role, there may still be a lot of tasks that you learn how to do it fairly quickly. There's repetition, but it's just work that needs to be done. It may not be helping you master the craft at that point. And I think this is one of the things that I've heard concerns raised from leaders is, well, if AI is going to do a lot of that grunt work of the low level person in whatever role it is, the first year lawyer, the first year accountant, whatever it is, how are those people actually going to develop the expertise so that 20 years from now, they are the senior partner in the law firm, right? They are the general counsel and they've got all that experience. How do you replace or find a way for the people to get that same expertise if you're sort of outsourcing some of that lower level work to AI? And so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if you've thought a lot about that question, but yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting challenge.
I love your question, John. And there's going to be a variety of questions like those that I know you and I chat about questions like these all the time, right? For that one, it's just a guess, right? I think it's kind of like Karate Kid. Remember he was painting the fence, wax on, wax off. I think it's going to be a number of iterations as these apprentices, as these assistants are going from the various levels of their skill to expert that we're going to want them to do so that they can understand. It's about an understanding. It's about an experience. It's about those things that you pick up when you do something. And then at one point you're like, okay, I know what that is. Now AI, the machine can do it. But that's just a guess.
I think you're right. And it's probably going to vary by profession, by organization, et cetera. But everyone's thinking through this and how do you find the right set of things so you can still build skills in people while also taking advantage of these AI capabilities. So let's talk a little bit about, maybe more than a little bit about, challenges and lessons learned. So we talked a lot about philosophy and frameworks and so forth, but let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty. And I'm sort of curious about a few things. When you when you first started launching AI initiatives at Adobe, and we'll talk about AI specifically, did you run into resistance, analysis paralysis, a fear of moving forward on things? And if so, how did you help drive through that? How did the other folks, who were innovating on AI drive through it? And was the A through F model helpful in any of that? Like, how did you get beyond maybe initial friction in rolling some of these things out?
In my case at Adobe, we were, and a lot of this probably is because we had our own foundational model, Firefly. It was much more biased towards, let's get a machine that's working quickly. Let's figure out what are the risks that we care about. Because I mean, if you sit down with somebody, compliance, privacy, you name it, they'll give you a long laundry list of risks. Which one of those risks pertain to you or you care about is a different story, right? So we were really biased towards velocity, biased towards which risks truly concerned us. And I think every organization just truly has to go through that exercise. But I will tell you one of our biggest unlocks, and I've spoken to many CIOs, CTOs, COOs, very interesting discussions on how each company approaches this. From my perspective, you need a hard wall between experimentation and product, and like going production live with something. Experimentation, production. And the reason is people over here at experimentation, they're just trying to figure out what the thing does, right? I've talked to people in the other companies who are in experimentation mode and they're being asked about KPIs. We're in the technology sector. There is an aspect of our jobs that's like forecasting, belief in the future, belief in hope, belief in what will come, right? And there's kind of a wait for it thing. If we let the troops experiment and let the experts experiment, the things that come across are going to be amazing, because you don't experiment going, I'm going to solve this problem. You experiment, you know the capabilities, right? You know all these Lego pieces and you know how to do it. And then you're in another meeting completely not related and you hear the problem and you're like, oh, I know based on my experimentation how to solve that. Now you can give me KPIs and all that.
Sure, but you're just saying be very clear and explicit, I think, about these sets of things that we're doing over here are experiments. Nothing may come of them. There may be no return. There are no KPIs, right? And you probably need to do that in a limited way because you can't just throw unlimited resources at. And there's another set of things where it's like, we've committed to doing a project or an initiative or something, and we're doing that. It's going to take advantage of these capabilities, but that's a different thing because there will be expectations around, a completion date and outcomes and so forth. That's a different category of activity.
One of my things I'm into, which is crosses in technology, is songwriting, John. When I'm songwriting, this thing that I'm into, which I do use technology and digital audio workstations and all this stuff, I know every song I write is not going to be a hit record. Quite frankly, if 10% of the songs that I write were a hit record, I'd be winning Grammys left and right. I mean, I think that we have forgot how much iteration it takes to get hit records. But to your point, John, you ring fence, how much time, how much effort are we, writing new songs versus, pushing out the songs we wrote before or printing vinyl or whatever you're doing, right? So I think each enterprise has to define its resources, each category, but then set expectations accordingly, where productize things, production ready stuff, KPIs, experimentation, more like in the hit record category where you're going to get like hopefully high single digit effectiveness. But like if people are writing hit records, like, John, I know you're in down the garage writing records. We need 50% of them to be hit records. You're like, dude, 50%?
Are there examples and anything you can share around an AI use case where maybe after some experimentation, you all decided we are not going to pursue that either because it didn't work or it wasn't that helpful or just I don't know, maybe you're like, it just wasn't a good idea.
AI, although it's probabilistic, not deterministic, like the compute we've been using for many years, is still just software or software plus content, right? So what has happened more times than I can count is the way that we thought we were going to get there, that didn't work. The foundation model we thought we were going to use, layer one, that one wasn't a good one. artifacts that we were going to put in from our curated, knowledge of everything. We put the wrong ones in. A lot of iteration, a lot of course correction along the way. And, just in the spirit of candor and just how technology works, we often go back and look at what the solution actually turned out to be and where we begin. So it's really just a failing forward thing all over again.
Right. And that we're very good at that in Silicon Valley, right?
Exactly.
Fail fast, learn from it, and move forward from there.
Yeah.
I would love to get your perspective on something that you may be uniquely qualified to talk about, which is everyone's got concerns, let's say, around compliance and what does it mean to be using AI and so on and so forth. And as of this moment, anyway, there is not a lot of external regulation, right? And we tend to not be in regulated industries where we sit. But how are you thinking about and navigating and helping Adobe navigate in your role inside, the Office of the General Counsel, compliance, where you don't have a lot of external regulation or a lot of external guidance on what you can and can't do?
This is going to sound like a highly non-technical and non-scientific answer. We are really grounded in trying to do the right thing. It's interesting because, at least for me, when you see these regs come out, they may be written very long and big bodies of text. But if you take a step back, they're like, oh, they don't want people to do this because that injures people, or that could harm people, or somebody's personal health information, say the whole health privacy thing. Rockett's personal health information being out there is not cool for Rockett. Not that we have some magic wand or that I have a magic wand to foresee what regulations could be. But I think we get really close when we don't look at regs and go, what does the reg say? And I'm compliant and I'm good and I don't know what's going to come. That part's important. Don't get me wrong. I'll talk about our two companies here, have great cultures, have great communities of clients, have clients that trust us. That trust, yes, we give software they can trust, but that trust is also even more so standing on the shoulders of how we behave. So if we go back to our first principles of how we behave, which is the first reason they came to us to begin with, that gives us tremendous foresight into doing things, not because a reg existed, but because we knew it was the right thing to do. And if a reg comes or doesn't come to address it, we're sitting in a good situation.
Yeah, I was just thinking that if you begin with that good intent, right, the right ethics, we have a value at Box called Make Mom Proud. And you just think like, okay, let's ground it in that because that's the company culture. And it happens that there's no written regulation. I love your point that in the future, if there is a regulation, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be compliant with it because you've done the right thing from day one. Well, the details may matter, right? So exactly how you did it and how you crossed the T's and dotted the I's, but the intent and the spirit, you'll be in very good shape if you handle it that way.
100%. I mean, we have a very sharp lens. We have various different customer segments. I'll name two. We have Adobe Max, where there's a bunch of creatives who use Creative Cloud, right? Completely tuned into them. And that's at Adobe Max. In Adobe Summit, we're tuned into all of our people who are doing marketing as a day-to-day job, right? Just being in tune with that audience. And I think you just said, make mom proud. Make mom proud.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the future. So I'll ask you to pull out your crystal ball a little bit here and ask you a few thoughts. But it's also, if we can sprinkle in here some advice for peers, because you all are pretty far along. You've thought a lot about this stuff. Not everyone's quite at the same place. So anything in here that you think would be useful for others who are maybe a little bit earlier in the journey. But let me start with this. What AI developments do you think are going to unlock scale, in particular for the areas of legal and compliance in, let's say, 2, 3, maybe 5 years? I know 5 years is an eternity right now. What do you think is happening in AI or likely to happen in AI that's really going to unlock, scale in legal compliance?
I think in legal in particular, the issue has always been volumes and volumes and volumes of text. Whether it's contracts, whether it's company policies, whether it's case law, whether it's laws, whether it's the congressional minutes that created the law that give you an idea of why the law was created. Just volumes and volumes of text. And very difficult for definitely not one human, but even teams of humans to consume. And then after they've consumed all that, they have to try to figure out, what does that mean? I think it's going to accelerate all that. So, because what we wanted to get to was a discussion over, what does it mean? What does it mean for our company? What does it mean for your company? What does it mean for our customers? But there was this huge payload because just quantitatively, it's just too much. And you would just throw humans at it to try to like, okay, well, a bunch of people read all this stuff, then we can mine these volumes of content and then have it basically pick out what's pertinent to what we're thinking about. It just zones us in. And I'll go back to something I mentioned before. I'm heavily into avoiding intellectual fatigue. So the more that my experts and the apprentices who are along for the ride to become experts, the more that they can get at the issue at hand, the better the result is most likely, versus them drifting or what have you, because they're just trying to deal with this container of information that's too much. So I really think that is the huge unlock in the legal space and many other spaces that by nature, for right reasons, step one is just a lot, too much to consume.
So do you see AI as being a tool in our tool belts to help narrow that down and help us, like, maybe not completely solve the problem, but say, look, of all the stuff that's out there, here's the stuff that's really relevant, germaine's the thing you're trying to solve, focus on this and make the right call based on that. Is that kind of how you think about it?
Absolutely. And I'll yes and you as follows. We use a lot of words in culture and even in corporations about focus, about being strategic, all these words. For me, it means apply the subtractive method. Because if you have all these things you can do, but you subtract, then I can focus on this. You have all these things you can do, but I'm focused on this. I can be strategic towards this. So a subtractive method approach, I think it is highly effective. We see when we apply that method how well it works. Also, it becomes a filter because it's like, hey, what are you doing? That's outside of the filter. We said we use the subtractive method and we're here. You're over here. Get back in here, right? Yes, and to everything you're saying, it starts to make some of the other things we're trying to do better, our focus, our strategies, our execution, all that.
So back to the area of advice, what do you see other legal, you said you speak to a lot of peers, in this space. What do you see folks getting wrong about how they think about AI and risk specifically? Too conservative, not conservative enough, something completely orthogonal to that? Like what are people not getting right?
To me, it's something orthogonal. And the numbers are kind of weird, but the vast majority of people that I speak to, there's two things that I believe they'd miss, but my experience is only my experience, one human on earth. Number one, humans, before we wrote and were able to mass produce things and publish them, whether it be digital or physical, we spoke to one another, we communicated. Communication speech is one of the original human methods of conveying information. AI has made speech to text really good. Some people more prefer to go to a keyboard and type their stuff. That's cool. Everybody should choose their route. But there's a good population that these thoughts are going through their head and actually the keyboard is slowing them down. I'm one of them, by the way. If I just pick your tool of choice, and I just start rattling off what is in my mind, a couple of magical things happen. Number one, it actually does great transcription now because it's predictive technology. They can figure out what the heck you were trying to say, even if you pronounced it weird. Number two, you just did a dump of everything that's in your head. And number three, most of us don't talk illogically. So when you're talking, it's probably chronological. It probably is in a good sequence. It probably builds upon itself. It probably makes a whole lot of sense. So number one is, I think that this transcription, this voice to text, as humans, we like to talk. I mean, look at the YouTube and the podcast universe. Look at which we're talking right now, right? We like to talk. It's a good way to learn and convey one another. I think, number one, we should use that more. It's darn good at it. The second thing, a lot of people I talk to, they're like, well, I told AI what I wanted and then give me what I want. I'm like, you think AI is tip of tree? And this goes back to the experts. This goes back to the learning your craft. This goes back to the gifts thing we spoke about. I've tried it both ways. I'll ask AI to do something with no guidance of what's in my head. It may not be wrong. It's just not something I would send or use because it's not my point of view. It's not how I would even approach the problem. Conversely, back to point one, I basically just regurgitate everything that's in my head in whatever manner it is with all my mispronunciations, what have you, and say, hey, clean that up and make it concise. And I read that thing, I'm like, wow. I think people, as my second point, so transcription is a valuable tool for those who are into that. But number two, it's almost like a sandwich. Human begins it, AI comes in, and human in the end, because it's human plus machine. A lot of people are just going machine first. So those are like two things that super resonate for me, and I have conversations with people about that all the time. Like, why don't you just begin on, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of being very conversational with AI so that you can get your thoughts out, have sort of a thought partner, if you will, help you refine, organize, that kind of thing. And then when it's done, then you have an artifact that you then as a human can also say, does it still reflect what I believe, what I think, what I'm trying to communicate, what I want to get across? So you're right. You start with you, have the AI help you kind of clean it up, and then you end with you, right? And I think that's a great sandwich to think about.
Start with you and end with you. They're just coming out the woodwork, John.
Well, and I think we've been clear. I think most of us have been clear with our teams that, even if you use AI as a tool in delivering the work that you're responsible for, at the end of the day, you are still responsible for that work, right? You can't, like, we don't delegate hiring decisions to AI. You might use AI to help you assess candidates or come up with questions or help screen. But at the end of the day, it's a person making that decision, right? It's not AI. And I think that maintaining that rule is very, very important in enterprises.
Absolutely. It starts with you, ends with you. It's the equivalent of when you do a keynote, right? If you cooked the direction, you cooked the presentation, you like get up there, you're feeling it, you nail it. If someone else cooked it for you, like, I can't do this. These are like, what am I saying?
Repeat someone else's words, Eric.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Last one, sort of in the advice category. What would you tell CIOs or legal leaders who are behind on AI readiness today? What should they do right? It's 2026 now. They're behind. What should they do?
They should look either at their corporate card or their personal card and see how many dollars are going out each month for subscription to these foundational models in the potentially inverse way. The amount of money that I spend per month on these foundational models is like a car payment, because I need more than the basic level, the free tier of India stuff to understand what's going on, to stay on the pulse of this thing. I need to really understand the landscape. I need to play with all these things. This is not something that someone on my team can brief me on. I need to get my hands dirty. Code beats paper. That means that, coding is now taking a different construct, but, following that philosophy, right? Kind of the same thing. I need to roll up my sleeves. I need to get my hands dirty. I need to be able to have those intelligent conversations. I need to be able to sit in a meeting. I did this a couple of weeks ago. I said, hey, before we leave the meeting, and I know this wasn't the subject, I just tried this yesterday. And if you tried this and we'll do that for you, everybody was like, woo, right?
Get people excited about it, right?
They get excited. But that is rooted in, I made all these things accessible to me. So if you're talking about KPIs, my KPI is, if you see the monthly expenses going out of my personal pocket as well as my corporate card a month, what it indicates is I am desirous and I must have access to all these things so that I can play with all these things so that my IQ is raised. And then I have a foundation. Everyone has their own experiences to truly engage with people, to compare notes, to the water cooler thing like you're talking about, all of these things. And when I talk to other people in roles similar to ours, John, some of them, hands dirty, roll up the sleeves, are in there. Other of them are getting briefed by their team. I don't know how you get briefed by your team on the next cutting edge thing. I think you can kind of do it.
Well, especially if you're in a role like yours where you are the CTO, right, for your organization, how can you not understand these things? And I would say, we don't plug Box on this podcast, but I would say the approach we've taken with the ability for customers to choose different models, but still work on their same content without having to hand the content up is incredibly valuable, because exactly to your point, I can take the exact same prompt, the exact same set of documents, and I can ask Gemini a question. I can ask ChatGPT a question. I can ask Claude a question and see how they compare in terms of things like accuracy, tone, et cetera. And I may decide to use different models for different use cases, or multiple models for different parts of the same use case, right? And it's a very powerful capability.
I saw that, John. So fun fact, at BoxWorks, I went to multiple master classes, and I was sitting in one because I gotta get my hands dirty, right? I got to get my hands dirty. I'm sitting in one of the master classes, and I didn't know before the master class that I could do that in Box. And I think I might have said something out loud like, yes, or something like this. And everybody kind of looked at me like, what's up with that? I'm like, never mind. But that capability is amazing. People knowing about those capabilities, people attending as many master classes at BoxWorks and or other as they can, because I was a happy fellow that day.
And by the way, on master classes, we are going to take that on the road. Just so we're working on some stuff right now to take some of that same content, because not everyone obviously could come to BoxWorks. But I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you had a good experience. Okay, I always love to talk about three things in my role, and they're sort of value, culture, and experience, right? So how are we driving value for our end users, consumers, customers, what have you? How do we think about culture, and particularly change management? Like, how do we get people to do things differently? And how do we think about the user experience that we provide? We think about that a lot in customer success. So I just want to do a little bit of rapid fire on these topics. And the first one is, how do you think about, define, and measure the value of Adobe's AI and legal tech initiatives?
People don't like to, and we don't want them doing tasks which are boring, dirty, or dangerous. If the thing you're solutioning for hits one of those elements, that's pretty good. We're talking about filter, right? Talking about subtracted method. In our case, it's a lot of the boring stuff. And then when you're looking at the thing you're trying to solution, so that's like one of my axioms, if you will. Then I look at what I call QVC, kind of like the shopping channel, but the acronym is for something else: quality, velocity, and cost. So if I solve this boring thing for you, can I solve it at the same quality that you would have did it, or if not better? Will I increase the velocity? It will get done quicker. And will the cost be cheaper, including like zero? And so that's how I look at that first proposition. And I'm pretty analytical about it, because I'm convincing myself during the process. It's one of these things like, software developers of small companies get into this, like, is this level of effort worth it, right? Is it the level of effort worth it? Is it solving something that's boring, dangerous, or dirty? And although only the first one really pertains in our context. And the second thing is, okay, do I have a reasonable belief that I can address one of quality, velocity, or cost?
Right, maybe all three. And without going into the specifics, each one of those categories, Q, V, and C, can have associated metrics, right? So you can measure quality in a particular way. You can measure velocity in a particular way, and the same with cost. So it gives you can start to turn that notion of value into a measurable thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so then let's move to culture and change. What has proven the most effective for you in building trust and driving internal adoption? It could be generally, but certainly with AI. Are there specific techniques, tactics that you've taken that you found to be particularly effective in getting people to do something different than what they're used to doing?
Well, there's something I've come across, but I'm not sure it's me. When people join our organizations, when they're junior or mid-level experience, or even senior for that matter, right? But across the gamut of experience, from expert to novice who hopefully will be an apprentice and become an expert, all of us say, mostly because we're in the technology sector, a good idea can come from anywhere. And I fundamentally believe, I've always believed that, you've always believed that, the people we work with have always believed that, but how did that transport into reality, right? Kind of hard, because like, well, can you spin me up so many servers? And it was just a payload, sometimes infra, sometimes other dependencies associated with them doing that thing that a good idea comes from anywhere. And let's just be, candid about it, as we always are. the more senior somebody is, the more resources they had to enable to do that. So although we said good ideas come from anywhere, people that were more senior with more resources within that organization had a bigger opportunity. This has become the equalizer on two ways. When the people who are more junior in an organization are like, I have a great idea, let me now show you, because AI has quick cycles, better cost structures, all that. They could show you, they can demo it to you, they can show and tell it to you. Conversely, the people who are junior who are like, who before would leverage how am I going to do that, right? It's like, you can do it now.
Yeah. Well, we see this every day in our world. If you just think about, building a custom demo for a customer, before how you would do that, you'd sort of but the effort to do a truly custom demo for a customer was very high. Whereas now you're like, well, I could create a custom demo environment for every single customer that truly is custom, that takes some of their content or content that's relevant for their industry. And using these tools, I can show them something that's like, oh, that totally makes sense to me, right? I'm not showing a retail company a legal example or a legal company, this is very, very differentiated now. So that's a great, showing that power, I think, is pretty important.
You touched something else, John, that I wasn't thinking about until what you just said. In the past, we would cook things and, because it took more time to cook, and we'd have to explain, like, analogize how it worked for their use case, right? I'm actually saying the opposite now. Since you can do that personalization for what their problem is, they're like, wow, that's cool. That solves this problem, but that can also solve these other problems. So you're seeing the reverse now, because we're able to show how it can address that problem more precisely. They're now able to understand the customers, the clients, the other business units, the other aspects of your organizations, where they can scale that capability. So it actually went the reverse way, in a positive way, in my experience.
And speaking of experience, my last category was experience, and the experience we create for our customers, or end users, or whoever your stakeholders are. So let me ask you this final question. When you roll out an AI-enabled solution, what does success look like?
I'm going to go back to a previous answer. It is as it was. I think we got it right a long time ago. I think it was about engagement. I think it was about the time they were using it. This is way before like social media, et cetera. We were always like, are they using it? How many times a day do they log in? How long are they on it, right? As rudimentary as that may be, and as old as that may be, we moved into social media, we're looking at the same things. As we move into AI, I'm looking at the same things, because if we're trying a solution for humans, the KPIs of engagement, all the KPIs, monthly active users and daily active users, you name it, are as paramount as they always were, if not even more so, because people have more options now. So if they're actually using your thing more, because in your case, John, they can sit in Box AI and flip between models. Or in my case, they can sit in Firefly or sit in Acrobat and do all that stuff, right? Because options just keep showing up every day. And if your engagement is going up while options are getting wider, that's great for what we are all doing.
And that's success. So now we know what it looks like.
Exactly.
Well, Rockett, thank you so much. I think that's a wrap for today's episode of the AI First podcast. I really appreciate your time, your thoughtfulness, your experience, certainly your partnership over the years with Box. And we look forward to doing a lot more with you. I think this was a very interesting and unusual, perhaps rare look at the ways that legal and AI and technology not only coexist, but also actually reinforce and unlock each other. So I appreciate that. And I'd say, if there's a single theme that really stood out, it's that scale doesn't just start with these models. It starts with our own experts, the unique knowledge that we have inside our domains, and then leveraging that, given these capabilities, the trusted content, the frameworks like GIFs that you shared with us, and the right guardrails that begin with ethics, which are not a constraint, but actually a launch pad for responsible execution and consumption of these technologies. So thank you for all of that, all of those insights. I think our audience and listeners will really appreciate that and learn a lot from that. So thanks again. And folks, if you'd like to hear more stories like this, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're ready to bring secure AI-ready content to your enterprise, Head on over to box.com/AI. You can see what Box AI can do for you. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning into the AI First podcast, where we go beyond the buzz and into the real conversations shaping the future of work. If today's discussion helped you rethink how your organization can lead with AI, be sure to subscribe and share this episode with fellow tech leaders. Until next time, keep challenging assumptions, stay curious, and lead boldly into the AI First era.